The bridge between us. There was a bridge at the edge of town, not remarkable, not grand, but quietly steadfast. The kind of bridge that never made it to postcards but lived in everyone's memories anyway. The Central Park Bridge, they called it, though it was neither in the center nor particularly park-like. It simply stretched over a slow, drowsy river that mirrored the sky like it had all the time in the world. If you stood there long enough, you could hear the town breathe. Cars passed lazily, conversations drifted from nearby benches, and the scent of coffee from a small shop across the street mingled with the damp sweetness of river air. Mara used to think the bridge was where time paused, not stopped, but lingered just long enough to remember itself. She used to walk there every morning as a girl, before the town woke up. She'd bring her sketchbook and a piece of toast, sit on the railing, and watch the world start. Her mother used to tell her, bridges are where people meet halfway. But back then, Mara didn't know what that meant. Not until she met Simon. Simon lived on the other side of town, the side people called the low street, though no one ever said it unkindly. His father was a carpenter, his mother worked at the laundromat, and Simon himself had the quiet patience of someone who had learned to fix things rather than replace them. Mara first saw him one morning sitting cross-legged on the bridge, sketching. His pencil moved quickly, but his eyes lingered on the light, as if it was something he wanted to learn by heart. When she passed, he looked up briefly, just enough to nod, then went back to his paper. It should have been an ordinary moment, but somehow, it stayed with her. After that, she found herself timing her walks so she might see him again. And she did, often. They never said much at first. She'd stand near the railing, pretending to admire the view, while he worked quietly beside her. It became a ritual, the kind that feels accidental until you realize it isn't. Over the months, their silence became comfortable, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. One morning, she brought him an apple turnover from the bakery. He thanked her with a small smile, and she noticed for the first time that his hands were stained with graphite, his nails lined with sawdust. "I built cabinets with my father," he said simply, as if that explained everything. From then on, they talked. Not about important things, never about dreams or promises or love, but about what the river looked like after rain, or how the bridge creaked differently when the weather changed. She learned that Simon liked simple things, quiet streets, freshly sanded wood, the smell of rain on old books. Sometimes he'd sketch her without asking. Not her face, but her presence, her shadow leaning over the rail, the curve of her hair against the wind. "You look like you belong here," he once said. And though it wasn't a confession, it felt dangerously close. The bridge became their place. They painted it one spring after the town council announced a volunteer cleanup. They spent hours scraping off the chipped paint, laughing at the stubborn rust that refused to go away. By the end of the day, Simon's shirt was splattered white, and her braid had come loose. She remembered thinking that if the world ended that afternoon, she'd die content. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Simon was offered an apprenticeship in the city, an opportunity his father couldn't refuse for him. "It's only a year," he told Mara, standing on the bridge at dusk, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. She nodded, pretending the light in his eyes didn't look too much like goodbye. He left the next morning. For a while, letters came. Long, thoughtful ones. He described the city's noise, the smell of varnish in the workshop, the ache in his hands from shaping wood all day. "It's strange," one letter said, "but sometimes I close my eyes and hear the river. I think I miss that sound most." She wrote back faithfully, about the bakery expanding, the mayor's endless speeches, the bridge needing new planks again. She didn't tell him she missed him. Not directly. But she ended every letter with, "The bridge still stands." After the first year, the letters came slower. Then fewer. Then, one day, they stopped altogether. The last one she received said only, "I hope you're still painting the bridge." She wasn't. Not anymore. Years went by. The town changed, new stores opened, the old ones closed. The bakery owner retired. The park near the river got new benches. And Mara stayed, as people like her often do, not out of fear, but because the town felt like an unfinished sentence she wasn't ready to end. She married a gentle man named Thomas. He was good to her, the kind of good that was steady, not exciting. They had a son, then a daughter. Her days became filled with routines, morning deliveries for her flower shop, school lunches, birthdays, anniversaries, and every so often, quiet mornings by the bridge. Sometimes she'd see couples standing where she and Simon once stood, laughing, leaning close, and she'd smile, but it was a distant kind of smile. The kind you wear for something you remember too clearly to forget, but too kindly to mourn. Decades slipped by like pages turning themselves. When the town announced that Central Park Bridge was to be rebuilt, too old, they said, unsafe, Mara didn't protest. But when the workers came with their hammers and ropes, tearing down each plank she once painted with Simon, something inside her trembled. She stood on the bank, clutching her bag of groceries, and felt the years collapse. It was like watching the dismantling of her own history. Weeks later, when the new bridge opened, she went early one morning. The town was still asleep. The air was damp, the light soft and silver. The wood beneath her feet was new, the paint still smelling faintly sweet. She touched the railing, and for the first time in years, she whispered his name. And then, as if the morning had been waiting for it, she saw someone at the far end. Simon. Older, thinner, with graying hair and the same quiet eyes. He was leaning against the railing, his posture slightly bent, but his gaze steady. For a heartbeat, the years between them dissolved. He walked toward her, slowly, almost carefully, as though afraid she might vanish if he moved too fast. When he finally stood beside her, neither spoke. The river murmured below, and for a long while, that was enough. Then, softly, he said, "I helped rebuild it." She looked down at the bridge, then back at him. His hands were still rough, still shaped by wood. And she understood. This wasn't about repair, it was about remembrance. About honoring what had once been built, even if it could never be the same again. He told her he lived by the coast now, that he had a workshop near the sea. She told him about her flower shop, her grown children, her husband who had passed quietly in his sleep 2 years before. There was no awkwardness, no regret, just the quiet recognition of two people who had once shared a moment the world didn't notice but that had shaped them all the same. As the sun rose, Simon placed a small wooden carving on the railing between them, a miniature bridge, delicate, unfinished. "For you," he said simply. She ran her fingers over it, feeling the familiar grain beneath her touch. "You never stopped building," she whispered. He smiled, his eyes soft. "And you never stopped standing by the bridge." When he left, because of course he would, she didn't call after him. She just stayed, holding the carving, watching his figure fade down the path. The river glimmered below, catching the first light of morning. That night, she placed the carving on her windowsill, where the moonlight could find it. And in that quiet moment, she finally understood what her mother meant all those years ago, that bridges are where people meet halfway. Because maybe love isn't about crossing over. Maybe it's about standing on opposite sides and still feeling the warmth of the same wind. And as the town slept and the river whispered beneath the new boards of Central Park Bridge, Mara smiled, not because the story had ended, but because it still lingered, suspended between memory and peace. Some bridges, she thought, are never burned. They just wait, patiently, silently, for the right souls to remember how to walk them again.